You want to know the truth about him? Fine, I'll tell you, but you have to promise me something first. You have to promise you won't laugh until I'm finished. Because everybody laughs at the start. Everybody. And then, somewhere in the middle, the laughing stops. His name was Adon Vale. No, that's not right. That's the name they carved into the wall later, the official one, the hero's name. But that's not what we called him. To us, he was just Vale. The quiet one. The human in the back row who never raised his hand. I'm going to tell you about him the way I knew him. Not the way the statues tell it. Not the way the song goes. The real way. The small way. Because the real story is always smaller than the legend, right up until the moment it isn't. Let me start at the beginning. I need you to picture a place first. Close your eyes if you have to. There was a station once. We called it Threshold. It hung out past the edge of the hollow reach, in that cold black part of space where 3 different territories all bumped up against each other and nobody could agree who owned what. So instead of fighting over it forever, the old powers did something strange. They built a school there. A neutral ground. A place where the children of 40 different species could come and learn together. The idea was simple, even if nobody really believed in it. If the young ones grew up side by side, maybe the old ones would stop killing each other. Maybe. Threshold Academy, that's where I met him. The station was beautiful in a tired sort of way. It was old. It groaned at night, the metal settling and shifting like an animal turning in its sleep. The lights in the corridors flickered if too many people used the lifts at once. There was a smell to the place too, a sort of recycled air smell mixed with whatever 40 species cooked for their dinners. You got used to it. You stopped noticing after a while. And then years later you'd smell something like it somewhere else and your whole chest would ache. The big window. I have to tell you about the big window. In the main hall there was a window 3 stories tall, and through it you could see the reach. All that black and the dust clouds lit up faint and purple where the dead stars were. Students used to sit in front of it between classes. Some of them prayed to it. Some of them just stared. It made you feel small in a good way, you know. Like your problems were small too. I used to find Vale there, sitting by the window, always alone. Now me. I should tell you what I am so you understand how this story starts. I'm Threll. We're a tall people, taller than humans, with the gray skin and the ridge down the back of the skull. My people are warriors. We've been warriors for 9,000 years. We have a saying, strength is the only honest language, and we believed it. Stars, did we believe it? So when I tell you that I look down on humans, I want you to understand it wasn't personal. It was just obvious. To me, to all of us. Humans were new. They'd only crawled out into the galaxy a few generations before. They were soft. They were small. They got sick from things that didn't make the rest of us blink. Half of them couldn't even breathe our standard air mix without a little patch on their arm. They were charity cases mostly. Everyone said so. The coalition had let them into the academy as a gesture, a kindness, the way you let a stray animal sleep in the warm part of the barn. That's how I saw Vale the first day, a stray. He came in late to orientation. The doors hissed open and there he was, standing in the light, this thin human with dark hair falling into his eyes and a bag over one shoulder. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He just looked for the nearest empty seat, found it, and sat down. Somebody laughed. I think it was one of the Corin boys, the ones with the bright feathers, always loud, always cruel in that careless way. He said something about the human getting lost on the way from the petting zoo. Vale didn't react, didn't even turn his head. And I remember thinking, weak, can't even defend himself. Among my people, you answer an insult or you accept that you deserved it. There's no third path, so I filed him away in my mind under that word. Weak, and I didn't think about him again for a long time. That was my first mistake. I made a lot of them with him. I've had a lot of years to count them. He was quiet. That's the thing everyone remembers, and it's true, but it doesn't capture it. It wasn't shy quiet. It wasn't scared quiet. There are different kinds of silence, and you learn to tell them apart if you pay attention. Vale's silence was the kind that watches. In class, he never spoke unless a teacher called on him directly, and even then he kept it short. He got his answers right mostly, not in a way that showed off. He'd just say the correct thing in that flat, tired voice, and then go quiet again like he'd never spoken at all. He sat in the back, last row, far corner near the window if there was one. He always knew where the exits were. I noticed that later when I started noticing things. Whatever room he walked into, his eyes did this little circuit first. Door, window, who's here? Then he'd sit. He ate alone. He trained alone. We had combat instruction twice a week, even at a peace school, because the old powers weren't fools and they knew peace doesn't hold itself up without somebody who can fight. Vale was always the last one picked for the sparring drills, and he never complained about it. He'd take whatever partner was left over, usually some other outcast, and he'd go through the motions. He never won. But here's the strange part, and I only understood it much later. He never lost the way you'd expect either. You'd throw a human across the mat and you'd expect them to stay down a while. Vale got up every time, quick, already turning, already ready. It wasn't graceful. He wasn't fast like the sleek species or strong like mine. But he got up. And there was something in the way he did it, something almost bored, like getting hit and getting back up was just a thing that happened, like weather, nothing to make a fuss about. I sparred him once that first year. I'm ashamed of it now. I went hard. I wanted to teach the human a lesson, show him what real strength looked like. I put him down 4 times. 4. And the 4th time I stood over him, breathing hard, and I waited for him to stay down, to give up, to do the smart thing. He looked up at me from the mat. His lip was split and there was blood on his teeth, human blood, that bright, shocking red. And he smiled, just a little. "That all?" he said. Quiet, almost gentle. I didn't know what to do with that. I still don't, fully. I walked away angry. I told myself he was stupid. Too stupid to know when he was beaten. It took me years to understand that he wasn't telling me he could beat me. He couldn't. He knew he couldn't. He was telling me something else entirely. He was telling me that beating him wasn't the same as winning. That he could be put down 1,000 times and the 1,001st time he'd still get up, and what were you going to do then? Kill him? Fine, but you'd have to. There was no other way to stop him. He decided that about himself a long time before I ever met him, and he carried it around quietly like the rest of us carry our names. I didn't see it then. I just saw a stubborn human with a split lip, smiling like a fool. There were rumors, of course. There are always rumors at a school. He gave us nothing to work with, so we invented things. Some said he was a criminal, sent to the academy as part of some deal. Some said his family was dead and the coalition was paying his way out of pity. Some said he'd been a soldier already, which got laughed down hard, because how could a soldier be so young, and besides, what war? Humanity hadn't fought any wars worth the name. They were too new. Everyone knew that. There was one rumor I remember, because it turned out to matter. A girl from the Lumen world, sharp little thing with the glowing skin, she swore that Vale didn't sleep. She had the room across the corridor from his, and she said his light was always on. Every hour of the night cycle she happened to wake. And sometimes, she said, she heard sounds from his room. Not crying. She was very clear about that. Not crying. Counting. She said sometimes, late, you could hear him through the wall, counting. Slow and steady. Like he was keeping time with something only he could hear. We laughed about that too. The human who counts in the dark. We made it into a joke. I'm not laughing now. I want to tell you about the cafeteria thing, because it was the first time I really saw him. Saw past the quiet. There was a boy at the academy. I won't use his real name. Let's call him Korth. He was big for his age, one of the heavy world species, all muscle and gristle, and he was a bully. The worst kind, the kind that's smart about it. He never picked fights with anyone who'd actually fight back. He went after the small ones, the soft ones, the ones from the species that couldn't or wouldn't defend themselves. There was a little one, a WLL, do you know them? Tiny things, gentle. They communicate mostly through color, these soft pulses of light under their skin, and they're hopeless in a fight, completely hopeless, it's not in them. Korth had picked this little WLL as his project for the term, took its food, tripped it in the corridors, made it flash that frightened gray color over and over for laughs. Nobody stopped it. I didn't stop it. I want to be honest with you about that. I watched it happen for weeks and I told myself it wasn't my business. Strength is the only honest language, remember. The WLL was weak. That's what I thought. The WLL deserved what it got for being weak. That's what my people would have said. Then one day in the cafeteria, Korth went too far. He grabbed the little WLL's tray, the food it had waited in line for, and he dumped it on the floor, and then he put his foot in the middle of it and ground it down, slow, watching the WLL pulse gray and white, and that terrible flickering color they make when they're truly afraid. And a chair scraped back. The whole room heard it, that scrape. It cut right through the noise. Vale stood up. He'd been in the corner alone like always, and now he was standing and he was looking at Korth across the room, and I swear the temperature dropped. I'm not being poetic. The room got cold, or it felt like it did. He didn't shout. He didn't make a speech. Humans love speeches in their stories, but Vale never gave one in his life that I heard. He just walked over, slow, unhurried, and the room went silent around him the way water goes still. Korth saw him coming and laughed. Of course he did. A human, skinny human kid, the back row nobody coming to play hero. Korth outweighed him 3 times over. "You want some too?" Korth said. Vale stopped in front of him, looked up at him because Korth was so much taller, and he said, very quietly, so quietly that those of us at the next table barely caught it, "Pick up the tray." Korth laughed again. "Or what?" And Vale, I'll never forget this, Vale tilted his head, just slightly, like he was genuinely curious, like Korth had asked an interesting question and he was thinking about the answer. "There's no or what," he said. "I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to pick up the tray, get a new meal, bring it to him." He nodded at the little WLL. "And then you're going to leave him alone for good." "And if I don't?" Vale was quiet for a second. "Then we find out which one of us gets tired first," he said. "I should tell you, I never get tired." I have replayed that moment 10,000 times. There was nothing in his voice. No anger, no fear, no bluster. That was the frightening part. We're all used to threats. Threats have heat in them. This had none. It was like being told the weather. Cold front coming in. Bring a coat. Korth's grin slipped. Just for a second. And in that second something passed between them that I didn't understand at the time, but I understand now. Korth was a bully, and bullies have a sense for this. A sense for the difference between someone who is pretending and someone who isn't. And whatever Korth saw in that human's flat gray eyes, it scared him. Down in the animal part of him, it scared him. He picked up the tray. He didn't get the WLL a new meal. Korth wasn't capable of that much grace. But he picked up the tray and he set it on the table and he left. Fast. Trying to make it look like he wasn't leaving fast. And Vale just turned around and walked back to his corner and sat down, and went on eating like nothing had happened. The little WLL pulsed a color I'd never seen before, a soft gold. I learned later it's the color they make when they feel safe. It's rare. Most of them go their whole lives barely making it. I sat there and I felt something I didn't have a name for yet. Shame, partly, but underneath the shame something else. A question. What is he? After that I started watching him, really watching. And the more I watched, the less sense he made. Little things. He'd flinch at sounds the rest of us didn't even register, a particular pitch of alarm, a certain hiss the airlocks made. He'd be calm as still water, and then a door would cycle wrong somewhere, and his whole body would go tight for half a second before he caught himself. He knew the station better than the staff did. I saw him once take a turn down a maintenance corridor that wasn't on any of our maps, like he'd memorized the whole skeleton of the place. When I asked him about it later, we'd started by then to almost talk, in the way you almost talk to someone you sit near for 2 years. He just shrugged and said, "Always know your way out." Out of what? He looked at me, and he gave me this small, sad smile, the one I came to know, the one that meant he wasn't going to answer. "Anything," he said. His hands, I noticed his hands. They were a young man's hands, but they were wrong somehow, scarred in places, the knuckles thick, a couple of fingers that hadn't healed quite straight. Workers' hands, I thought at first, but they weren't. I'd seen workers' hands. These were something else. These were hands that had done things over and over until the doing was burned into them. And once, just once, I saw his back. We were in the wash facility after combat drill. He always changed quick, faced the wall, kept himself covered, and I'd never thought anything of it, humans being strange about their bodies. But that day he wasn't fast enough, and I saw. His back was a map of scars, old ones silvered with age, new ones still pink, lines and burns, and one long ragged thing that ran from his shoulder all the way down past where I could see. There were marks there that I recognized, because I'm Threll, because my people are warriors and we are taught to read wounds the way other people read books. I recognized a plasma burn. I recognized the puckered star, a kinetic round leaves when it goes in, and a worse one where it comes out. I recognized restraint scars, the kind you get from being bound and fighting the bindings until your own skin gives. This was a soldier's back. No, worse than a soldier's. I'd seen soldiers' backs. This was something I didn't have a word for. This was a back that had been to war and stayed there a long, long time. And he was 16, maybe 17, by human reckoning barely more than a child. He saw me looking. He pulled his shirt down, and neither of us said anything. But that night I couldn't sleep, and I lay in my bunk and I thought, who did that to him? And then a colder thought, the one that wouldn't leave. What does a child have to live through to come out the other side that quiet? I should tell you about the hollow reach, about what was out there, because you can't understand what happened next without it. The reach was supposed to be dead space, empty. That's why they put the school there, the neutral school, in the part of the galaxy nobody wanted. But it wasn't empty, not really. There were things out past the dead stars, old things. The histories called them different names in different languages, but most of us just called them the Devourers because that's what they did. They came out of the deep black every few generations and they ate. Worlds, stations, fleets. They didn't talk. They didn't make demands. They didn't take prisoners or want territory or anything a person could understand. They just consumed and moved on and left nothing behind but cold rock and silence. The old powers had fought them before. The histories were full of it. Whole armadas thrown against them, millions of lives, and the best anyone had ever managed was to slow them down, to buy time. Nobody had ever beaten a devourer swarm. You just survived it if you were lucky and rebuilt after and prayed your grandchildren wouldn't see the next one. They'd last come through 2 generations before. The math said we were safe. The math said it'd be 100 more years. The math was wrong. I want to be careful here because this is the part where the story gets large, and I don't want to lose the smallness of it, because that's the thing about that day. It started so small. It started with the lights. It was a normal day. That's what I always come back to. It was such a normal day. I remember I was annoyed about a grade. Can you believe that? The galaxy was about to end and I was sulking about a mark in xenotactics. I remember the breakfast smell in the corridor. I remember somebody laughing somewhere. I remember the big window with the reach behind it, all that purple-black, peaceful as ever. And then the lights flickered. Now, the lights at Threshold flickered all the time. Like I told you, old station, so nobody looked up, nobody but Vale. I was near him in the main hall. I saw him stop. He'd been walking and he just stopped, stood very still, His head came up, and he looked at the lights, and then he looked at the window, at the reach. And the color drained out of his face. I'd never seen that before. Vale was always calm, always still water, but the blood went out of his face like someone had pulled a plug, and for 1 second, I saw something underneath the quiet, and it was the most frightened thing I have ever seen in my life. Not frightened for himself. I knew the difference even then. Frightened like a man who recognizes a sound from a nightmare he thought he'd left behind. "No," he said, very soft, to no one. "No, not yet," the math said. The lights flickered again, and this time they didn't come all the way back. And then the station alarms went off. Not the drill alarm. We knew the drill alarm. This was something else, something I'd never heard, a deep grinding wail that came up through the floor and into your teeth. The big screens in the main hall flashed red, and a word came up on them in 40 languages at once, the word every species in that galaxy had a different name for but the same fear behind. Contact. The reach behind the window wasn't peaceful anymore. Out in all that purple-black, the dead stars were lighting up. No, not lighting up. Being blotted out. Something was moving across them, vast, darker than the dark, and it was coming. And it was so big that the part of my brain that measures distances simply gave up and refused to give me a number. The devourers had come early. They'd come for the school. And 40 species worth of children stood in that main hall and screamed. I have to tell you what those next minutes were like, because the legend always skips them. The legend goes straight from the alarm to the hero. But there were minutes in between, and they were the worst minutes of my life, and I won't let them be forgotten. It was chaos, pure animal chaos. The teachers tried, I'll give them that. They were scholars, most of them not soldiers, and they tried. They shouted for order. They tried to herd us toward the evacuation craft. But there were thousands of us and only so many ships, and everyone knew the math instantly, everyone, even the youngest, because fear does the math for you. There weren't enough ships, not for everyone, not in time. So it stopped being people and started being a stampede. I saw children trampled. I saw the strong shove the weak aside without a thought. I saw a teacher knocked down and not get up. I saw the worst of all of us come out, all 40 species of it, that ugly thing that lives in everyone, the thing that says me first, me, mine, live, survive. I'm not proud of where I was in that crowd. I was big and strong and I used it. I pushed. I'm not proud. And in the middle of all of it, I lost sight of Vale. The station shook. The devourers weren't even on us yet, and the station was already shaking, the gravity stuttering, the air going thin in places as sections breached and sealed. Through the big window you could see them clearer now, and I wish you couldn't, I wish I couldn't, because they don't have a shape you can hold in your mind. They're wrong. They're holes in the universe with hunger behind them, and they were close. I made it to an evac corridor. I was packed in with 100 others, all of us crushed and shoving toward the bay where the ships were, and the line wasn't moving, and people were starting to understand that the line wasn't going to move in time, and that's when the panic became something worse than panic. That's when it became despair. You could feel it go through the crowd. A whole crowd of children just giving up, going quiet, the worst quiet, not Vale's watching quiet, the other kind, the end kind. And then a voice came over the station system. It wasn't a teacher. It was him. Everyone listened to me. That was all, 4 words, but there was something in the way he said them. I told you his voice was always flat, always tired. It wasn't flat now. It had something in it, something that reached into the back of your skull and grabbed the part of you that obeys. I learned later there's a name for it among soldiers, that voice, the one that cuts through panic. Command. He had it. Where does a child learn command? Everyone listen to me. I know you're scared. Stay scared, that's fine, scared keeps you alive. But you're going to listen and you're going to live. The crowd went still. 1,000 frightened children, 40 species, and they went still to listen to a human nobody. The ships in Bay 3 are too small and too slow. They won't clear the swarm. If you board them, you will die in them. Do not go to Bay 3. A ripple of horror. because Bay 3 was where everyone was running. There is a second bay, Bay 9. It's not on the evacuation maps because it's a maintenance dock and the ships there are old and the staff don't know about them. I do. They're cargo haulers, they're ugly, but they're fast and they're shielded and there are enough of them for every single one of you. Everyone, do you understand me? Nobody gets left. Nobody. I remember the feeling in my chest when he said that. Nobody gets left, like cold water and warm at the same time. I've unlocked the route. The doors will guide you. Follow the green lights. Move fast, move calm, help the small ones, carry anyone who falls. You leave no one behind. That's not a request. And then his voice changed, just slightly. Just for a moment the command cracked and the boy underneath came through. "I'll hold the door," he said. "Just get to the ships, please, just get there, go." The green lights came on, a path through the chaos glowing sure. And we ran. I didn't go straight to the ships. I want you to understand what that cost me, because it's the bravest thing I ever did and it's nothing next to him, but it was the most my small soul could manage that day. I broke from the crowd. I went the other way, toward his voice, toward where he was. I don't fully know why. Shame, maybe. The shame of the cafeteria, the shame of pushing children aside in the corridor. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe I just couldn't stand the idea of him being alone again. He was always alone. And now he was going to be alone in the worst place, holding the worst door, and something in me, some small new thing he'd put there without knowing it, said no, not this time, not alone this time. I found him at the central junction, the place where all the station's main corridors met, the choke point, the throat of the whole place. If the devourers got through there, they'd be into the evac routes in minutes. He'd known that. Of course he'd known that. He always knew where the doors were. He was at a control station, his hands moving fast over it, faster than I'd ever seen him move. And the screens around him were full of things I didn't understand, station systems, power routing, structural diagrams lit up red. He heard me come in. He didn't turn around. "Threll," he said. He knew my step. After 2 years he knew my step. "You're supposed to be on a ship." "So are you," I said. He almost laughed. I heard it in his breath. "Somebody has to hold the door. Then there will be 2 of us holding it." Now he turned, and he looked at me, and his face, God's, his face. He looked so young in that moment, younger than I'd ever seen him, and so old, both at once. Like the boy and the soldier were standing in the same body, looking out at me through the same eyes. "You'll die here," he said, plain, the way he said everything. "So will you." "Yes," he said, "but I'm used to it." And that's when he told me. Not all of it. There wasn't time for all of it, but enough. The shaking got worse, and the alarm screamed, and somewhere far off I could hear the first sounds of the devourers reaching the outer hull. That sound, I can't describe that sound. And in the middle of all of it, Adon Vale told me, fast and quiet, who he actually was. "You ever wonder," he said, hands still flying over the controls, "why a human got into this school?" "Charity," I said. It was the honest answer. Everyone says. Everyone's wrong, not angry, just tired. It wasn't charity, it was a hiding place. The station bucked. He grabbed the console, kept working. "You know what humanity's done out here, Threll. You know our history. Course you don't. Nobody does. We're new, we're soft, we're charity cases. That's the story. That's the story we let everyone believe." He pulled up a diagram, started rerouting something, the screen flaring. "You know why we let them believe it? Because the truth is worse." "What truth?" He looked at me, just for a second. "The devourers came to us first," he said. 40 years ago, before they ever showed up on your borders, they found Earth. And they did to us what they do to everyone. They started to eat." I didn't say anything. The station screamed around us. We didn't have a fleet. We didn't have allies. We didn't have any of the things you needed by the histories to even slow them down. By every rule of every book in this school, we should have been a dead world. A footnote. The species that lasted a generation in the stars and then got eaten in the dark and nobody noticed. His hand stopped for a moment. His eyes went somewhere far away. "We didn't get eaten," he said. "How?" And he gave me that smile, the small sad one, the one I'd never understood. "We're not soft, Threll," he said. "We just look soft, that's the trick of us, we look soft so you don't see us coming." He turned back to the console. "We fought them not with fleets. We didn't have fleets. We fought them the only way we knew how, the way we've always fought everything that was bigger and stronger and older than us. We fought them dirty. We fought them in the dark. We fought them with nothing, and we kept getting up, and we did not stop, and we did not break, and we did the thing that no species in the history of this galaxy has ever done." The hull groaned. The sound got closer. "We won," he said. "We pushed them back. We didn't slow them down. We didn't survive them. We beat them, the first species ever to do it." A pause. "It cost us almost everything. You have no idea what it cost, but we did it." I stared at him. "Then why hide it? Why come here and pretend to be?" "'Cause the old powers found out." His voice went flat again, flatter than I'd ever heard it. "And they got scared. A young species, soft and small, that beat the thing none of them could beat. You think they wanted that loose in the galaxy? They didn't celebrate us, Threll. They buried us. They made the deal. Humanity gets to live, gets to join the coalition, gets to send its children to the nice neutral school, as long as we keep our mouths shut, as long as we let everyone keep believing we're charity cases, as long as the ones who actually did the fighting disappear." He looked at his own scarred hands. "There were soldiers in that war," he said. "Children mostly by the end. We ran out of grown ones. The devourers don't care how old you are, they just care that you stop moving." He flexed his fingers. "The ones who survived, there weren't many. The coalition wanted us gone, quietly, so they scattered us, hid us, put us in places nobody would look for a war hero." He gestured around at the school, the dying station, the whole quiet pretend life. A back row seat at a peace academy. The quiet student, the human nobody, that was the hiding place they gave me. I finally understood the counting in the dark, the flinching at the airlocks, the scars, the exits, that all, on the sparring mat. He wasn't a stubborn boy. He was a veteran of the only war in galactic history that humanity wasn't allowed to have won. A child soldier from a buried apocalypse, sitting in our classroom doing his homework, eating alone, waiting for a nightmare he prayed would never find him. And it had found him, here, now, at the one place he was supposed to finally be safe. "The math said 100 years, I whispered. "The math is for the slow swarms," he said. "Sometimes a fast one comes. We knew that, we tried to tell them." He shook his head. "Nobody listens to the charity cases." The far doors shuddered. Something was on the other side of them now, something vast. Vale straightened up. He looked at the door. And then he looked at me and he was calm again, all the way calm, still water, and I realized the calm wasn't emptiness. It had never been emptiness. It was the calm of someone who made his peace with dying a very long time ago and had simply been waiting, all these quiet years, for the dying to come back and collect. "Go to the ships, Threll," he said gently. "No. There's no winning here, you know that. I can buy them time, that's all, enough time to get the ships out. I can hold this junction long enough, but the one who holds it doesn't leave. That's the price. I knew that when I unlocked the doors." That smile again, so sad, so kind. "It was always going to be me. It's fine. This is what I'm for. It's the only thing I was ever for." The far doors began to buckle. The metal screamed. Through the gaps in the dark, something moved that should not exist. And Adon Vale, the quiet student, the human nobody, the buried hero of a war the galaxy pretended it never lost, rolled his shoulders and cracked his ruined knuckles and stepped between us and the end of the world. "All right," he said softly to the thing coming through the door, to an old enemy, to a nightmare he'd beaten once and would have to beat again, to the dark. "All right, let's find out which one of us gets tired first." I didn't go to the ships. I want to say that again because it's the only part of this story where I get to keep a little dignity. He told me to go. He told me twice. And I stood there in the throat of that dying station, and I shook my head like a stubborn child, and I said no. He looked at me for a long second. The doors behind him were buckling. The metal was screaming. There were better things to spend that second on, and we both knew it, and he spent it looking at me anyway. Why? He said. Not really a question. He was too tired for the question mark. Because you held a door for a little WLL once, I said. Because you've held a lot of doors, and nobody ever held one for you. Something moved in his face. Just a flicker. I'd known him 2 years, and I'd seen him calm and seen him afraid that one time at the window, but I had never once seen him surprised. He was surprised then. Like the idea that someone might stand with him had simply never occurred to him. Like it wasn't in the math he'd done about his own life. You'll die, he said again. You keep saying that like it's an argument. And he laughed. He actually laughed. Short and rough and real, the realest sound I ever heard him make. And then the far doors gave way, and there was no more time for any of it. I need to tell you what came through that door. I've tried not to all these years, but you can't understand him if you don't understand what he stood in front of. You know how I said the devourers don't have a shape you can hold in your mind? That's true of the swarm, the great mass of them out in the black. But up close, in a corridor, one at a time, they have a shape. It's worse that way. The mind keeps trying to make sense of it and it can't, and the failing makes you sick, makes your eyes water, makes some deep animal part of you want to lie down and stop being alive so you don't have to keep looking. They came through low and fast and many. Dark things, wet-looking, all wrong angles and too many joints, and they made a sound, not a roar, nothing so clean as a roar. A clicking. A vast patient clicking like 1,000 small machines counting down. I froze. I'm Threll. 9,000 years of warriors in my blood, and I froze solid, and I would have died right there in the first 3 seconds, frozen and useless, if Vale hadn't moved. He moved like water going downhill, like it was the most natural thing in the universe. He didn't have a real weapon. There were no real weapons at a peace school. He had a maintenance bar he'd pulled off the wall and a shock baton he'd taken from a guard station, and that was it. That was all. A boy with a metal bar against the end of the world. And he was magnificent. I don't have a better word. I've searched my whole life for a better word, and I don't have one. He went into them, and he was everything he'd never been in our classroom. Fast, certain, brutal in a way that had no cruelty in it at all, just efficiency, just a terrible economy of motion where nothing was wasted, where every movement ended something. He fought the way he'd told me humans fought. Dirty, in the dark, with nothing. He used the corridor, the angles of it, the choke point, the way only so many of them could come at him at once. He'd known the shape of this place would matter. He'd chosen this junction for exactly this. Of course he had. He always knew where the doors were. And he was counting. I could hear it under the clicking, under the screaming metal, soft and steady. The counting the Lumen girl had heard through his wall all those nights. I understood it now. It wasn't madness. It was rhythm. It was the metronome a soldier sets in his own skull so the fear can't set the pace instead. He'd been counting himself to sleep for years with the same beat he was killing to now. The war had never left him. He'd just been keeping time with it in the dark, waiting. I unfroze. I won't pretend I was any good. I wasn't. But I'm big and I'm strong, and I put my body where it could do the most good, which was behind him, at his back, catching the ones that tried to flank around. He fought the front. I held the back. We didn't talk. There wasn't air for talking. But once in a half-second lull, he glanced back at me, and there was something in his eyes I'd waited 2 years to see and never expected to. He wasn't alone, and he knew it, and it mattered to him. The station system kept talking the whole time. Updates. Bay 9. Ship by ship. I'll never forget that voice, calm and automated, counting up the lives going out into the dark while we held the throat of the place against the thing that wanted to swallow them. Vessel 1 departed. 41 aboard. A WLL family, maybe the little one. I hoped it was the little one. Vessel 2 departed, 38 aboard. Vale took a hit. I saw it. One of them got a limb past his guard and opened his side, and the human blood came, that shocking red, more of it than a body that size should be able to spare. He didn't stop. He shifted his weight, adjusted, kept counting, kept fighting. Like the wound was just new information, just weather. Vessel 5 departed, 40 aboard. We were losing the corridor, slowly, step by step. There were too many. There were always going to be too many. This was never a fight you won. He'd told me that at the start, plain as the weather. There's no winning here. This was a fight you spent. You spent yourself, second by second, life by life, and you bought time with the spending, and the only question was how much time you could afford before the bill came due. He could afford a lot. Stars, he could afford so much. I have never seen anyone spend themselves like that. He gave and gave and gave, and there was always more, some deeper reserve, some place inside him the war had dug out years ago and filled with this exact thing, this exact terrible ability to keep going past the point where going is possible. Vessel 9 departed, 39 aboard. How many ships? I gasped. I'd taken a wound of my own by then. My arm wasn't working right. 12, he said. He wasn't even breathing hard. How was he not breathing hard? Need 3 more out. 3 more. I did the math the way fear does it for you. 3 more vessels, the rate they were loading, the rate we were losing the corridor. The numbers didn't work. I could see they didn't work. We'd lose the junction before the last ships were clear. The devourers would be into the evac routes. All of it for nothing. He saw me do the math. He always saw everything. There's a way, he said, quiet between blows, but you won't like it. Tell me. The junction's a choke point because of the structural braces. Take those out, you drop the whole section. Seal the throat with the station's own bones. They'd have to chew through 100 meters of collapsed deck to reach the evac routes. That's time. That's all the time they'd need. Then drop it. Can't do it from out here. He glanced at a sealed hatch halfway up the corridor, the one place we hadn't been fighting because it was behind the enemy now, swallowed in the dark and the clicking. Charges have to be set by hand, in there, and the one who sets them, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. The one who sets them doesn't come back out. He'd be on the wrong side of the collapse. He'd be sealing himself in with them. It was the door all over again. The same price, the same answer. It was always going to be me, he said again, gently, the same words from before, and this time I understood them all the way down. I tried to stop him. I'm not ashamed of that part either. I grabbed him with my good arm and I said no. I said let me do it, I'm bigger. I can hold them longer, let me. And he was so gentle. He put his ruined hand on my chest and he pushed, not hard. He couldn't have moved me if I didn't let him, but I let him. And he pushed me back toward the green lights, toward the way out. You can't read the charge sequence, he said. I can, I've done it before. A flicker of something old and dark crossed his face. More times than I want to remember. This is the one thing in the whole galaxy I'm actually good at, Threll. Let me be good at it. One last time. Vale. You held the door for me, he said. You did that, you stayed. Nobody ever, his voice caught, just once. You don't know what that's worth, to not be alone for the last part. You gave me that, so let me give you something back. Let me give you the way out. The station spoke. Vessel 10 departed. 2 more. He looked at me and the soldier was gone from his face, and it was just the boy. Just the quiet kid from the back row, the one who ate alone, the one who got up off the mat every time and smiled with blood on his teeth. 16, 17 years old. A child. The galaxy had taken his whole childhood and fed it into a war and then buried him alive for the crime of surviving. And here at the end, he was about to give it the only thing it had left him, which was the dying, and he was doing it gently. He was doing it kind. He was doing it without one word of anger at any of us. Tell them, he said. Tell them what? Anything, nothing, I don't care about the songs, he almost smiled. Just tell them we're not soft, tell them what we look like up close. Maybe next time they'll listen to the charity cases. The clicking surged. He turned toward it, toward the dark hatch, toward the last work of his life. And Threll, the little WLL, if it made it, tell it the gold suits it, tell it to keep making the gold. And then he was moving. Into the dark, into the clicking. The maintenance bar in one hand and the charges in the other, and the counting, soft and steady, fatting into the noise. The hatch was the last I saw of him. Him going through it, not looking back. Of course not looking back. He never did. He always knew where the door was, and he always went through it alone. And the only thing different this time was that for 2 years, for 2 short years in the middle of a buried life, somebody had sat next to him. I ran for the ships. Vessel 11 departed. I made the last one, the 12th. They were sealing the hatch when I threw myself through it, and hands grabbed me and hauled me in, 40 different kinds of hands, and somebody was shouting, and somebody was crying, and the engines were screaming. And through the small, dirty viewport I watched the station as we pulled away. And then the junction blew. It went the way he'd said it would. Not an explosion outward, an explosion inward, downward, the station's own bones folding in on themselves, 100 meters of deck pancaking into a solid wall of wreckage, sealing the throat, sealing the dark, sealing him in with the thing he'd beaten once and now beat one final time. The only way it could ever truly be beaten, by a human who would not stop, who would not break, who got up every single time until there was no getting up left and then spent even that. The devourers reached the evac routes too late. There was nothing there. We were already gone, all of us, every single one. Nobody got left. Just like he said. We drifted for 2 days before the coalition picked us up. 12 ugly cargo haulers full of children from 40 species, alive, all of us alive, and not one of us could say why except for me. I told them, I told everyone. I stood up in front of the coalition inquiry, this great hall full of the old powers, the ones who'd buried him, and I told them everything he'd told me. About the war humanity actually won. About the deal. About the hiding places. About the children they'd scattered and silenced. About the back row boy who died holding a door so that 2,000 others could live. I expected them to deny it. They didn't. That was the worst part somehow. They didn't even bother to deny it. The old powers just sat there, all that ancient authority, and they let me finish. And then there was a long silence, and then one of them, a coalition elder, one of the oldest species, the ones who'd made the deal 40 years before, said, very quietly, "We know. Just that we know." They'd known the whole time. They'd known what humans were. They'd known what the devourers were, and that the fast swarms could come early, and that the math was a comfort, not a promise. They'd known they'd hidden a war hero in our classroom. They knew all of it. And they'd done nothing, said nothing, because the truth about humanity frightened them more than the devourers did. A young species, soft and small. That beat the thing none of them could beat. I think that's when I stopped being Threll the way I'd been before. The warrior. Strength is the only honest language. I'd believed that my whole life. And I stood in that hall and I looked at the most powerful beings in the galaxy, ancient and strong and afraid, and I understood, finally, completely, that they had it exactly backwards. Strength isn't the honest language. Strength lies all the time. Strength looks at a quiet human in the back row and sees a charity case. Strength looks at a little WLL and sees something that deserves what it gets. Strength is what builds the song and forgets the boy. The honest language is the door. It's who holds it, it's who stays. They built the statue, of course. Eventually. Once enough of the survivors talked, once the story got too big to bury, the old powers did the thing the powerful always do, which is to stop fighting a truth and start owning it instead. Adon Vale, hero of Threshold, the official name, the carved one. There's a song now. There are 40 songs, one in each language. The little WLL species has one too, I'm told. I'm told it's about gold. I went to the statue once. Just once. It's enormous, it's beautiful. It shows him tall and noble and fierce, a warrior in the heroic mold, the way the old powers understand heroes, all strength and glory. It's wrong, it's completely wrong. He wasn't tall. He wasn't noble in that polished way. He was a thin, tired boy with dark hair in his eyes and scars he hid and a smile he saved for the worst moments. He didn't fight for glory. He fought because somebody had to hold the door, and he'd long ago decided that somebody was him. The statue makes him look like he wasn't afraid. He was afraid. I saw it that 1 second at the window. He was afraid the whole time. That's what made it mean something. Brave isn't the absence of fear. I know that now. Brave is the boy who's terrified and holds the door anyway. I didn't stay long at the statue. It wasn't him. I went somewhere else instead. There's a memorial wall, a small one, off to the side where the tour groups don't go. The names of the ones who died at Threshold. And there at the bottom, small, the way he'd have wanted it, the way he lived, ad unveil, and next to it in the human script, something the survivors had asked them to carve. His own words. The ones I gave the inquiry. The ones he said to me at the door. "We're not soft. We just look soft so you don't see us coming." I put my hand on it. My people don't pray. But I stood there a long time. "You promised you wouldn't laugh until I was finished. And you didn't. Nobody does by the end. They start out laughing, the quiet human, the back row nobody, the charity case, and somewhere in the middle the laughing stops, and by the end they're quiet too. The good kind of quiet, the watching kind, his kind. I've told this story 1,000 times now. I've gotten old telling it. I tell it to my own children, and to children who aren't mine, all 40 species of them, anyone who will sit still long enough to listen. Because the old powers built a statue, and that's fine. Statues are fine, but statues are for the legend, and I knew the boy. And somebody has to remember the boy. Somebody has to hold that door too. People always ask me the same thing at the end. They ask, was it worth it? 2,000 of us, and we lost the one who was worth more than all of us put together. Was that a fair trade? Was it worth it? And I tell them what I think he'd say, because I knew him a little at the end. Enough. He'd tilt his head just slightly, like it was an interesting question. And he'd say it wasn't a trade at all, that it was never a trade, that you don't weigh the door holder against the ones who get through the door, because that's not what the door holder is for. The door holder doesn't hold the door because the others are worth more. He holds it because that's what you do, because nobody gets left. Because somewhere out there a little WLL deserves to make the gold and keep making it. And the whole point of being strong, actually strong, the honest kind, is to stand between the gold and the dark and not move, no matter what's coming, no matter how tired you are. And then he'd give that smile, the small sad one, and he'd go quiet again. He was the quietest person I ever knew. The galaxy was so loud, and he was so quiet, and in the end it turned out the quiet one was holding all of it up. So that's the truth about him, not the statue, not the song, the real way, the small way. He was a tired boy who got up every time. And the last time he didn't get up, 2,000 of us walked out of the dark because he stayed down in our place. We're not soft. He's the reason anyone ever knew it.